Hi there, I'm Charles Cummings, and I'm going to be showing you and telling you all about my 900-mile cycle ride through the South Island of New Zealand. Um, yeah, I think, for two kinds of people here, if you're interested in cycling in New Zealand, or if you're just really would like to see some really beautiful and, some really beautiful and extraordinary photos of New Zealand. Stay tuned. It's kind of talk a little bit the format. It's going to be broken up into reasonable time frames because obviously I can't talk about a 900-mile trip on one video. That would be way too long. Okay, so on this is video one. I'm going to talk about just a little bit about New Zealand and basically the first day ride I had. Okay, so New Zealand. Hopefully you know where it is. I'm from the United States. It's basically on the exact opposite side of the world as the United States. So if you're in New York, it's literally, I think if you drilled a hole through New York, you would more or less end up at New Zealand. So yeah, Southern Hemisphere, way there across the Pacific Ocean. I first went there in 2009 on a working holiday visa. It's kind of the thing back then, if you're under 30, you could go and work for a year. And I actually just kind of went there and worked a lot, and I always wanted to go back. So I had an opportunity to go to New Zealand, and I spent about 2.5 months there. Yeah, most of the time cycling around, or at least using a bicycle as the main form of transport. Anyways, so if you're interested in going, and of course this stuff's always, it's always changing. There are a couple of peculiar things about it in the fact that you have to have a ticket out to get in the country. That's not always true with other places. Like, if you go to Germany, you don't need a ticket out of Germany to get into Germany. I'm only speaking for Americans as of 2012. Obviously, all other stuff is subject to change. Actually, that's the only really peculiar thing. So basically, you can't go on a one-way ticket. Anyways, a lot of people don't go on one-way tickets a lot these days. I wanted to, but sort of had to buy another ticket out to get in the country. All right. So my experience, I did some cycling, but especially just casual day trips, and I was really looking to kind of get out there and do something a bit more challenging, a bit more, just kind of, definitely a bit more challenging. So, the mountain's there. Let's climb that mountain. And I had some other Kiwi friends, and they had cycled across America actually. I think California to New York, and so they kind of gave me some good advice on what to get. And so I have to say thanks to them because really the gear they recommended for me to buy was really pretty much spot on, and it was a big plus. The picture here you've been looking at is the bike, and that's a German bike, Cube Hide. It's kind of like an urban bike. So if you don't know a lot about bikes, there's sort of three general types: road bikes, mountain bikes, and sort of this category in between. It's called hybrid. Something in between. And just so you know, I'm a casual cyclist, but that's sort of good. So you know that a casual cyclist can go out there and do these big cycle trips. You definitely don't need to be a professional to do it. But anyways, this is a German bike called Cube Hide, sort of designed for urban living. A lot of people in Europe commute with bikes. I really wish more people in America commuted with bikes. Yeah, it's pretty versatile. And so one thing, if you're going on a 900-mile cycle ride, so just to clarify, I was just traveling by bicycle. Everything I had with me was on the bicycle, basically. So you sort of need some special gear to be able to travel that way. And they're called pannier bags. You can see them, the red bags here in the front and the back. And they're clipped on to pannier racks. And a lot of, unless the bike's specifically designed, that's usually an add-on where you sort of have to basically like drill into the frame of the bike to add on these racks. So I bought I bought it used on Trade Me, which is sort of the New Zealand eBay. Really, really good deal. I think I got everything, the bike and a lot of the gear for about $700 US, and I spent about another $500 or $600 getting other stuff, tent, sleeping bag. Anyway, so I had about $1,200 in it all together, which is quite a good deal. Yeah, so you bicycle, and and you need these pannier bags. So in the pannier bags, you want to have everything you need to survive. Okay, so here's not a complete list, but the things I had: a tent, a sleeping bag, raincoat, winter coat because it was winter there. So basically, I could be winterized or attempt to be waterproof. Cycle shoes, you're definitely going to want those. Those are the shoes that clip into the pedal. Regular tennis shoes. I think I had about 3 pairs of socks, and then I had about one cycle outfit and then one non-cycle outfit. Basically, just regular pants and a long sleeve shirt. And it was winter, so I had basically a set of winter clothing. And I actually traveled with probably more than most people did. I had 3 pairs of socks. As crazy as sounds, a lot of cyclists would only go with one to limit weight. In addition to that, basically a backpack, a few books if you want to travel, camera, one water bottle. I only needed one in New Zealand because you could get, it's a very wet country and you get water all over the place, basically. That's not necessarily true if you're going, if you're cycling through a desert or something like that. This kind of yellow vest, some people wear them. I sort of just strapped it onto the back. I have a front light and a back light. And basically, let's see, camping headlight, like a camping headlamp, I should say. And those are the main things. That doesn't sound like a lot. It adds up. I think between the bike and all the gear, we were looking at probably about 60 pounds. And so the bike was probably about 28. I had probably about 32 pounds of gear. So that's a lot. And you're talking about like a 900-mile cycle ride. And New Zealand's hilly. It has some hills. I definitely felt pain at certain points, and I'll tell you, about that as we come to it. Anyway, so I actually started off in Wellington, and I left Wellington on the ferry. You just basically take the ferry across to Where do you go? You take the ferry to Picton. Yeah, this is what it's called. It's called Picton, and so New Zealand's two islands, North Island and then South Island below it. So I was in Wellington, and I took the ferry to Picton, and then so this is basically what you see now is a Wellington kind of harbor, and this is Wellington in the distance. Probably not really the best picture of Wellington. It's actually quite a nice city. I really liked it, but this is from the ship. So if you're wondering, what it's like, what your situation is to take the bike on the ferry, basically, I was the only person that did it, but other people do it, and you sort of just leave it downstairs in the hole, sort of tied up. It was a bit confusing because they didn't really give me instructions. I first started tied up next to the motorcycles, and then they said it's not, just basically tied up next to the barrels. New Zealand, it's definitely a casual place, so you kind of got to get used to, like, not everything has an exact rule. It's definitely not like Germany. It's really not like America at all. Some of those things are much more easygoing, as far as like rules and where you can put stuff. Anyways, they'll tell you, and if you're on the ferry, and you might have to like walk and find someone because the boat is really, really big, and then once you kind of get past them, you don't know where to put your bicycle, then you kind of have to walk back a few hundred feet to talk to someone again. So here's just a few more pictures, and this is nice. This is I think coming into Picton. This is and actually here this is Picton. So at this point I had kind of entered Picton and cycled up, and I actually stopped and just take a picture. And New Zealanders are very, very friendly. In fact, I stopped and just take a picture, and then someone pulled over and says, are you all right? Do you have a problem with your bike? And that was really like about 5 minutes into the 6-week cycle ride. So, yeah, you're gonna if you go cycling in New Zealand, I think you'll meet a lot of very, very friendly people. Okay, so day one, basically, I got up in Wellington early in the morning, took the ferry about 7 a.m. Arrived in Picton at 10. And then basically from about 10 to 4, I was kind of on this cycle ride. It was about a 60 kilometer, okay, so that's about 40 mile cycle ride. So nothing huge, but there were some hills, and I did no training at all to prepare for cycling at all. Hills or no hills, I did zero training at all, and so I didn't really know what hills meant when you're cycling, tens of miles and you have an additional 30 pounds on the bicycle. So these are just, you can see, you're talking about beauty. I think if you follow along this, what you're going to see is that New Zealand is one of, it has just some really extraordinary beauty. Oh, and I should have mentioned this before, but my route, because it doesn't really give anything away, is basically the South Island, to go from Havolock to west up around the peninsula, and then all the way down the west coast, and then cut across sort of the mountains and the southern part. That west coast cycle that is considered, I think it's considered one of the top 10 cycle rides in the world. So it was really an extraordinary experience. And you're probably wondering, okay, am I cycling on the road? Am I cycling on a dedicated bike path? Am I off-road? What am I cycling on? Most of the time I was on the road, and you'll see the road a lot in some of the pictures later on. I'd say probably 80% road, 10% dedicated cycle path, and then 10% I was going through a national park, which was kind of a mountain bike type scenario. And you'll see that later and some really interesting stories about that. So yeah, at this point, I'm kind of just going along the north coast of the South Island west towards Havolock. And actually, yeah, there is a sign. Welcome to Havolock, green shell mussel capital of the world. So they sell mussels. There you go. Yeah, they sell mussels. And the first night in Havolock, I actually camped out just about 50 feet from right here, where all these boats are kind of hanging out. Yeah, I think I'll tell you about lodging later on, but kind of just as we go along. So the first night I took the tent out. I camped out with a sleeping bag in the tent. It's pretty cheap. I think it was about $9, maybe $10, maybe a little less. If you're wondering about cost, it's hard for me to say, because before going to New Zealand, I was actually working in Afghanistan. I had been working overseas for most of the last 9 years. So sometimes it's hard for me to compare what I paid in New Zealand versus what it costs in America. But I think a lot of costs are about the same. Obviously, some things are cheaper and some things are more expensive. But I will say this: compared to Australia, New Zealand is probably about 25 to 33% less cost. And if you're considering going to Australia or New Zealand, I don't have anything against Australia, but if you're on a bit of a tighter budget, you want to get more value for your money, New Zealand is definitely the place to consider. Yeah, so this was day one. It was from Wellington to Havolock. So basically, Wellington, you get on the ferry, you take it to Picton, and then on the Picton, you cycle west to Havolock. And by the way, I'm not going to mention road names or talk about how big certain hills were. What I am going to do is I'm just going to put a few resources of what I used. There was a great book called Peddler's Paradise. That's like about a 50-60 page book, and that basically gives you the route to go. And that was the book's cheap, like $8 or $9 if you buy it there in New Zealand. And yeah, so I'm not going to talk about road names or anything like that. That just would seem a bit silly. All right, yeah. So this was day one in New Zealand. I'm trying to think of the day. It would have been maybe June 5th. I think probably about June 5th, 2012. All right, day two will be Havolock to Nelson, and yeah, that'll be in the next video. Okay, see you next time. Bye.